Anyway, since we seem to be out of witnesses, I thought I'd drink a little.
Okay, we're on.
We're on. This is it. This is the real deal. This is
About
the
time.
first inaugural episode of Straight Law Cocktail, brought to you by Tyler Pollock and Rob Harvey. Hello.
Cheers.
Maybe to begin with, the name. There actually is a cocktail called a straight law cocktail. And that is a mixture of 3/4 ounces of gin and 1.5 ounces of sherry. And so I just happened today to have a little Bombay Sapphire,
All right.
a bottle of Tio Pepe that I've pre-measured into a shaker with ice. Okay. Pour into a glass, strain. And I've added a maraschino cherry and leaf of basil to give it a little, je ne sais quoi, as it were. So there it is, the inaugural straight law cocktail.
There you go.
I'll try it. I've not tried one of these yet.
I'm sorry we're not together that I can try it.
Not bad. I mean, it's a little martini-ish.
Yeah.
You know, kind of a little straight liquor, but good. By the end of the podcast, I might be slurring my words and saying all sorts of gibberish. So I'm Rob Harvey. I'm a lawyer, about 35 years now with the firm of Harvey Denbuck Pollock, and my partner on the podcast, I guess, YouTube channel, as it is.
I'm Tyler Pollock. I'm a lawyer of about 5 years and do just family law, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of being mentored by Rob. So here we are.
Yeah, so there we are. And so the idea of the straight law cocktail is trying to talk to people about legal issues, particularly in the area of family law, divorce, in a way that is kind of direct and straight, having nothing to do with, sexuality of anybody watching.
That's not the nature of the name of...
No, they want their legal advice to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to try and do here. So that's the point of things. And so there we go. So what do we want to talk about today, Tyler?
You know what? I think an important issue that we need to talk about is, I guess, our perception of what we think clients' biggest issues are. What are the clients' biggest issues that they face? And I think that's a great way to start off our podcast. Figure out, well, what's the basic? What is the thing they need to deal with? So where are we at? What do you think about that?
What do I think about that? Well, I've had this conversation with clients. I've been divorced, so I'm not judgmental. In fact, I recall back when I got divorced being somewhat irrational and uncertain as to what I should be doing. So I think the biggest concern for clients to begin with is trying to get their feet on the ground again, trying to make their best decisions, trying to be their best selves in a very difficult situation. And so I think that's the principal challenge. I've lectured lawyers on this before, but one of the issues that occurs when you go through a breakdown is you have a highly agitated emotional state. I think that's fair to say. And I was going to show something. Let's see how this works, but there's a thing called the Holmes Raw Life Stress Inventory. And it talks about how certain stress levels occur based on life events. And you can maybe see that now. And if you look at the top 3 most stressful life events, death of a spouse, divorce, and marital separation from a mate. these are the things that are hardest for people to adapt to when they occur. And so I think when people come to us, they have a legal problem without a question, but they have an emotional problem, and sometimes they don't even realize it. And so they're trying to make really important decisions with somewhat fractured sort of capacity. So I think that's the biggest issue. Most of my clients now, even when they seem to be well adjusted, I say, you need to get some counseling. You need to get your head on straight. Otherwise, you're going to tell me to do certain things that may not be in your best interest.
That's interesting that you say that that's what it is. So I put a little thought into this leading up to today, and I came up with 3 things. And to me, they're sort of similar. My thoughts were, clients being irrational when they're trying to make decisions and when they're trying to deal with this conflict was their number one issue that they just can't seem to deal with. My next one was clients having a false perception of what justice is or what is just. And my third one was clients having unreasonable expectations of their lawyer trying to control the behavior of the other party or the other lawyer. And so it's funny that, I kind of come at it from a point where, I guess I've been doing this for about 5 years, and maybe I'm a little frustrated when day after day after day, this is what I see. And you're kind of calm sitting over there saying, hey, look at this. There's a reason why clients are having this struggle.
Yeah, it's funny. I work with a group called the National Self-Represented Litigants Project, and Julie McFarlane is basically the director, and she's a remarkable, incredible person. But she struggles with the stereotype of self-represented litigants as crazy people. It really irritates her when she hears that. And my perception, and I know she'll bristle if she ever watches this, is that self-represented litigants are kind of crazy. But then so are represented litigants. But the problem is twofold. If you're a represented litigant, you hopefully have a lawyer that can bring some objectivity to it and help you get your feet on the ground. But the other thing is when you don't have a lawyer, not only do you not have that filter, but you're trying to navigate in a world that was never designed for people that aren't lawyers. And so if you weren't kind of crazy going in, by the time you start working with the legal system, you're going to become very crazy. And when I say crazy, what I'm kind of talking about is this fight or flight reflex when we're placed in a situation of risk. And I think divorce is like that, whether you're the husband or the wife, or if you're a same-sex couple, either partner, they don't know what their future is going to look like. They've lost the trust of somebody who's incredibly important to them. And so that's emotionally devastating. But now they're looking at what their future is going to look like. Are they going to be able to get their reasonable share of assets? What are their bills going to be like compared to their ability to pay? So what is support going to look like if they have children? How are we going to parent together now that we don't like each other anymore? So I think that fear, it stereotypically puts people in a position, like a cat in a corner. Yeah. And so if you have a lawyer, that can mitigate a little bit, because your lawyer can help calm you down and make you feel like it's going to be okay. When you don't have a lawyer, holy shit. I mean,
yeah,
that fear is accentuated, and then you show up in a courtroom where everybody knows what's going on except you, and they make you feel like you're stupid or that you're crazy, and it accentuates that fear and that anxiety. So I think everyone struggles. Yeah. And the thing that frustrates me the most, and I've lectured lawyers on this, is when lawyers buy into it, right? Because we've been talking about clients struggling. Well, lawyers struggle way too often. And I've said to lawyers, if you adopt your client's anxiety, fear, and anger, now you got 2 crazy people trying to steer the boat. And I think, unfortunately, and I know what your experience is, there's a lot of lawyers that aren't far off the anxiety and fear of their client, and they're not making good decisions either. And I think that's the struggle, is the client doesn't know how to make a good decision because they're highly agitated under stress. Right. Sometimes their lawyer adopts that anger and fear. Yeah. And now they're both not necessarily making rational decisions. So I think that contributes significantly to the high conflict we often see in divorce and litigation where it's not needed, and inability to find resolution. I mean, I don't know what your experience is the last 5 years, but 35 years, it's stunning how many files 2 years and $50,000 down the road are within 5 or 10% of where you recommended they probably should end up.
Oh, consistently.
And
That's
why
just,
couldn't clients get to that place? Well, because they started out thinking that justice was going to deliver to them what they wanted. And because they were not completely rational. So
yeah.
I think that's the struggle. And I think that's, we're lawyers, we're not psychologists, but trying to help our clients make their best decisions in a difficult situation it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. I think that some of the reason that things settle 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road for basically what both lawyers would have agreed on as reasonable at the beginning is because clients buy into this kind of positional bargaining, right? Which is kind of like a traditional way that people buy a house, where you have a list price on one side, and then you've got an offer on the other side, and then you try and meet somewhere in the middle, and both hopes you're going to be closer to one end or the other. This goes on and on and on, and you pay your lawyers all this money to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, instead of being able to sit down and say, look how close we are. Let's capitalize on the fact that we can agree on what we can agree on and move forward. And there's other dispute resolution models, right? Other than going to court and other than even negotiating, and especially other than positional kind of bargaining like I just described, where we can get closer faster.
Yeah. Like me,
so how come we're not doing that?
That's interesting, right? I used to do way more collaborative law, right? Which is basically lawyers trained to negotiate effectively with a contract that says we can't go to court. So it takes all the incentive away from the lawyers to create a problem to the extent that might exist. So if we can't help you get a deal, we get fired. That's the underlying sort of ethos of collaborative law. Well, we haven't been doing a lot of that. And I've spoken to a couple other lawyers, one of which is Medicine Hat, that used to be the mecca of collaborative law, and they're having problems too. And the person I talked to kind of agreed with me that clients now, compared to 10 years ago, seem to be more insistent upon, I guess, what they'd call their rights, right? And I think this gets to your comment, where people think that justice is, in part, predictable and certain, but they also think justice is going to give them what they think is right. And they don't really fully consider that the conception of justice for the other side looks very different. So you have two people on two sides that both think that justice means getting what they're entitled to, right? And as lawyers, we kind of know inherently, if we're any good at what we do, that there's a range of potential, and that when you go to trial, you could be anywhere in that range, high or low.
You have no idea.
Clients.
I mean, well, maybe you know, but I mean,
tell clients,
I would say,
and they don't believe it, I don't think.
No, they don't.
If I get in front of a judge, he or she, they're going to see that I'm in the right here.
All of my clients, everybody says that. I've asked all of my friends, I've asked all of my family, they all agree. My judge just hears what I have to say. They just hear my side. There's no way they can't side.
Yeah, I know. So,
which isn't,
that's
take our word for it. That's not how it works.
So because of that, you get them into mediation, and they're in that same kind of mindset. I think more now than 10 or 20 years ago, where what is reasonable is what I want. And when you start talking about compromise and understanding the other person's point of view, I think it's harder now than it was a decade ago. In our whole society, I mean, I don't want to get into a political thing, but read the paper. People that are liberal, people that are conservative, we don't live in a time where people are trained or are familiar with understanding another person's point of view, right? You can go on the internet, and if you are a men's rights advocate, you can find stuff there that will say men are getting treated terribly. And then you can do the same thing for women, or you could do the same thing for whatever your demographic is.
Right.
And so the internet has given us tons of information, but a lot of it's shitty information. And it helps people validate their own sense of entitlement. that's problematic. And then you throw on top of that the reality that people don't stop and think about. And judges are not picked because they're necessarily the most competent, right?
Not necessarily.
Judges, some of the judges are awesome. Most of the judges are awesome, but not every one of them, right? There are other factors that go into, but people don't get this. And they also ignore the fact that judges are human beings and they have their own inherent biases and concerns that seem important to them. And then there are two sides to the argument. So that judge is put in a position, even if they're, of the wisdom of Solomon, where sometimes decisions are hard. This COVID thing, I don't know if you got any of these files where people are arguing about how do you keep your kids and your family safe when you don't trust the other person.
About right? 4 or 5 hours of my day every day. That's what I do now.
Yeah. And so, you give that to a judge and tell the judge, how do you make sure that the children and the families are safe? That's a tough call.
Oh, yeah.
And people think, oh, no, it's easy. No, it's not easy. And it's not certain. And if you can find a compromise, it's just helpful.
Yeah.
But that's a hard thing, particularly at the outset of a separation for people to get their brain around.
That's right.
Because of the stress, because of the anger, the anxiety.
Resentment.
What I try to do is I just talked to a client yesterday. And it's easy to see the now, right? To see the problem today. But I've said to many clients, when I got divorced, my kids were 3 and 1. And when my son graduated university, we had dinner and we sat at the table with my ex-wife and her husband and my second wife, both sets of grandparents, and my son and daughter. And my son told me how much he appreciated that. So I say to people, look, your kids are 4 and 5 or whatever they are. Imagine a situation where your kids can love both of their parents equally 10 years from now, where they don't feel they need to hide their feelings for both parents, where they don't feel like they need to pick a side. So try to get clients to see beyond what happened last week and to imagine what it might be like if they have a cooperative relationship. And it's not always easy. And sometimes my client's more difficult than others, and sometimes the other side's more difficult than others. But I think that's the aim, trying to get people in that place and trying to get them to counseling so they can be their best selves. To me, that's job one. Because if they don't do that, the product that you get in terms of instructions is always going to be faulty.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's way more likely the client's going to be upset or disappointed with the result.
Yeah, I've always got kind of 2 or 3 files on the go where it's, that client just has these sort of irrational instructions, things like don't file a claim. I don't want to go to court. And hey, make sure this is resolved in 10 to 14 days. And it's like, whoa, that's not even, those things don't even go together. That doesn't work, right? It's tough. It's tough to get clients sort of out of their own way. And that's how I see it as a little bit. Hey, how do we get these guys out of their own way so we can get to some resolution?
Yeah.
And I hear you kind of coming from a different place. You come from a place, I guess, with more experience, both personally and professionally, it seems like. Whereas I feel frustrated about that,
Yeah, I think it's frustrating, but I think it's easier when you just see people where they're at, not where you wish they were.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes I'll have clients and they'll complain about their spouse doing something they don't like or their partner. And I'll say, well, in part, they're doing what they do, right? Yeah. And you trying to ignore that or wish it away isn't going to change. So in some cases, I say it's like putting your hand in a box with a rattlesnake in it and it bites you, right? Now, you do that 2 or 3 times, getting mad at the snake is kind of pointless because the snake is just doing what it does, right? What you need to do is adapt to that reality, and you need to change your behavior because ultimately the only person we can control are ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's the other issue is when people have high anxiety and tension and anger, they really want to control the other side.
Yeah.
And getting them to understand that they fundamentally can't. And even if the court gives them a result that they think is reasonable, particularly when they got kids, that other person can do all sorts of things that you can't and the judges will not control.
Oh, yeah.
And so ultimately, finding peace is the goal. And sometimes that's through cooperation. Sometimes it's just through accepting what you can't change and living with that.
Yeah.
Right. Your other side is got certain things they do that make you crazy, and you need to learn to live with that because you're probably not going to completely change it.
Right.
So it's a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge.
You know, it's a weird way to make a living, right? You're involved in this sort of very intimate relationship with your clients, and we make a living doing that, right?
There's sort of this inherent conflict, right? Where I'm making a living off of their dispute. Maybe this goes back because you earlier said this collaborative process takes away incentive from lawyers to create a dispute where there isn't one. And maybe that's what you're talking about is, hey, we're
And I've
making
told
a
my
living.
clients that. I've actually said, I do this frequently. You need to understand that me as your lawyer, I'm always going to be in an inherent conflict of interest because the more you fight, the more money I earn, right? So you need to decide whether fighting is a good idea fundamentally. And I've used this crass example with clients frequently. I said, you know, when you're in my office, it's like a really expensive taxi ride, right? And that flag is just whipping around wildly at $500 an hour. But you control that, just like you do in a cab, right? So when the driver says, well, let's drive around the city, you have the right to go, no. I just want to go from here to there, right? And clients need to understand their power and the relationship they have with the lawyer, but the obligation as well to say, if I'm going to go around the city because I've decided that it's going to be more expensive and I need to decide that. I'm my lawyer, me. Lawyer gives me advice. I give instructions. And I think that's the best relationship. I know other lawyers that don't buy that, and it bites them in the ass. I take care of my clients. I have this paternal relationship. I'm going to make their best decisions. But then when things don't turn out well and the client looks at you and goes, well, why the fuck did you do that?
That's so hard on a lawyer.
Right?
I couldn't do it.
So it's way easier when you say to a client, look, here's your risk. Here's your downside. This is the cost. What do you want to do? And they don't want to make decisions. You say, you got to make the decision because I'm not going to.
Yeah,
when they make that decision, sometimes they don't make the best decisions. And you've given them advice. And they say, I want to go to court. You go, okay. And if things don't turn out well, and you've told them how much it's going to cost and what the risk is, they come back and say, well, I'm not happy about paying you this money because this result occurred. I sleep well at night going, I let you know this.
Yeah.
You made that decision with your eyes open.
Yeah, totally.
No subterfuge here. So I think empowering your clients, helping them make better decisions, it's both better for the client, it's better for me. I sleep at night, even though I make a good living, because I know my clients generally are paying me what they've decided they want to pay me.
That's right. Yeah.
And they've taken the risks that they want to take.
Yeah.
Not the risks I think they should take. You know?
Throughout my career to date, on occasion, because I take the same stance, right? I say, no, I'm not making your decisions. Here's the advice. Here's the cost. Here's the benefit. Here's the risk. You make the call. And occasionally I'll have these clients come to me and they'll say, well, hold on. What would you do if I was your brother? Or if I was your mom or your family member? Last week, I'm running this mediation, and they must be maybe 25, 26-year-olds, husband and wife, and they're separating. So I run this mediation, and the guy looks at me and he says, what would you do if I was your son? It's like, how old do I look? What do you mean if you were my son?
I had a discovery with our old associate from our former firm. We started this firm. And in the middle of the discovery, he referred to me as Dad. Right?
What?
And it was so funny because his client's eyes were like this big. Like, what's going on here?
Oh, that's pretty good.
And it's like, yeah, maybe there's a little imbalance in the power dynamic.
Yeah, I guess. That's pretty good. All right, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I laughed at that.
I hope that it settles favorably, of course, for your clients.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well at the end of the day.
Hopefully for everybody.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So what do you do then when you have clients who want you to control the behavior of either the other party or the other lawyer? I mean, my thing is I just tell them, we can't control what they're going to do. We can control what we're going to do. Here's your options. Make your choice, and let's see what they respond with. And we can't choose what they respond with. We can only reply to that.
Yeah, you try to get them to understand that risk. You try to get them to understand, their upside and downside and ramifications of their choices. And that sometimes there is no optimal outcome. It's just the best of a difficult situation. So, that's part of it. Sometimes you can put it in writing. Usually you put it in writing. Sometimes you get them to sign. I've had a couple cases where what they wanted was so contrary to their best interests. I actually wrote, a letter saying, I want you to sign this before I take this step, because I think you're going to be very disappointed with where this goes.
Right.
And no problem. Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
So I think, it's just trying to get them to get in a place where they can make that decision. There's little tricks, not really tricks, but helping them understand what's going on, right? I talk to them commonly about this Holmes raw life stress inventory, so they understand, not that they're crazy, that they're defective compared to everyone else, including me. I say to my clients, I remember what it was like on the other side of the desk. I'm a divorce lawyer, and I'm looking at my lawyer, and I don't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the shit or go blind. And I've been doing this at that point for 8 or 9 years, and I still wasn't sure what I should do. So I said, I understand that fear and that anxiety.
Yeah.
So I'm not judging them, but helping them understand that they're not in their best position and they need to get there to make good decisions.
Right.
One of the things I'll say to people quite often, I say it to lawyers too, is, this whole thing about fight or flight, right? Anger is quite closely related to fear. They both come from this part of your brain called the amygdala, right? This little peanut part of the base of your brain. And it makes really quick decisions when you're in a position of threat. So if a bear starts charging after you, your amygdala kicks in, and you don't start considering the weight and the speed of the bear. You just start trying to climb the closest tree, because your rational brain needs to take a backseat to your responsive brain, the fight or flight.
Yeah.
Well, when you're in a divorce, you really need that rational brain to kick in. You need to shut down the amygdala, right? Because they don't both work at the same time. And I tell clients this so they can understand kind of what's going on. I'll say, when you're really angry, you're not being as rational as you would like. And then the other thing is, and this is my own theory, I've never really looked at this, but it makes sense. I think innately, when other people are angry, we probably know they're afraid of us.
Mm-hmm.
We know they're insecure. So I'll say to clients, when you're exhibiting a lot of anger to the other person, you're sending a bit of a signal that you're afraid of them. And is that the signal you want to send? And I say the same to lawyers, right? When you're losing it with a lawyer on the other end of a file, when you're sending those snotty 4-page letters that the lawyers ignore, or when you're phoning and yelling, you're really sending a bit of a signal that you're afraid of the other lawyer. Is that the signal you want to send? Because I think we all know when you got a lawyer on the other side who's very calm, that can be intimidating.
Yeah.
When you think they're just being ridiculous, and I'll say this to lawyers, I'll say, you know what? We're just going to have to agree to disagree. I might be wrong, but that's what we have judges for. So let's just put it in front of a judge and we'll resolve it. It's not personal.
Right.
And I think personally, when lawyers exhibit a confidence in their position and they're not getting angry, is way more intimidating than when they're trying to tear a strip off you.
Totally.
And it took me probably a decade to learn that. I used to be the biggest dick on files because I was yelling at lawyers, and it took me a while to figure out that's not productive. It's, I get it. I'm upset for my clients and, I'm agitated, but at the end of the day, I found it was less effective.
Right.
This is our position. This is why I'm taking this position and I don't need you to agree. That's what we have judges for.
Yeah. I've got lots where lawyers will dig in on these positions, right? Where there's this point of law, and they think they're right. And bottom line is, it actually doesn't matter. The numbers work out that we've got a settlement on the table that maybe everybody likes, or maybe everyone doesn't like, but the numbers are close enough we can work with them, even if we disagree on a position. Some of these lawyers dig in on some of these positions. And that also, yeah, I find that's pretty counterproductive. And maybe that has to do with clients or lawyers taking their clients' emotions onto themselves.
Yeah, probably to some degree. And probably, or sometimes, I've taken positions that I didn't agree with, because those are my instructions. As long as they're ethical, and I've told my client their risk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I did a trial a few years back. A guy wanted to challenge custody of a little 11-year-old girl with his wife. And I told him, our chances are dismal.
Yeah.
Right? And he insisted, and we ran the trial and we won. He got custody.
Yeah.
And they appealed, and the Court of Appeals sent it back for a retrial. We ran another trial and we won again. So
Jeez.
Shows you how smart I am, right? I thought I was a dead loser, and it worked out. Now, to be candid, or full disclosure, I've had files I thought I couldn't lose.
Yeah.
That I lost.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the nature of the beast, and I think you learn. That's what experience gives you, is an understanding that your ability to predict outcomes is it's uncertain.
Yeah.
I don't care how good you are. I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how many years you've practiced. You never know going into a courtroom exactly what's going to happen.
No.
The best you can do is, we had a civil lit prof, a guy named Ace Henderson in Vancouver. I went to UBC, and he was slick. This guy was phenomenally strong litigator.
Yeah.
And he said he never gives his clients better than an 80% chance. Never.
Yeah, that's right. Very good.
There's always a 20% stupidity factor where something's going to be stupid. The client, the judge, the lawyers, something is going to screw that situation up, even what he would consider a virtually perfect case. Mm-hmm. So I remember that, and I've carried that from the day I first started practicing. There's no such thing as certainty in litigation. Very, very strong. 80%. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
You say to clients, are you the kind to go to Vegas? Trial might cost you $70,000 or $80,000.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the outcome, if we're arguing about money, there's $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 an issue. Would you put $80,000 on red on a roulette wheel, hoping you might get 160? And it makes clients kind of think for a minute, and they go, whoa, right?
Yeah,
and again, that gets back to exactly what you said, which is, do they understand the system is fallible? Do they really understand, right, that the outcomes are not certain, and that their perception of their rightness is misplaced?
Despite how many family and friends, I'm saying this because, man, it's important. Doesn't matter what your family and friends tell you.
I don't know if you've said this, but a few times, maybe you should hire your brother to be your lawyer, because clearly he knows more than I do, right? Why are you paying me all this money when so-and-so is giving you better advice than I am?
I got one right now, and my client's good friends with a lawyer. This lawyer's giving him all sorts of advice. Doesn't always mesh up with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
His lawyer does real estate transactions for a living.
Yeah.
I run custody trials. There's a bit of a difference, right? Yeah. And I do say, maybe you want to go hire this guy.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, if you got a copyright litigation, do not ask me for advice, because I'm next to completely incompetent.
Exactly.
Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
So what do we do? All right, let's summarize then. So what do we do? Tell me this. Do you ever actually track clients who see mental health professionals and gauge that against the clients that don't? You have the success with
No,
some.
no,
I do. I actually, one of my questions in my intakes is, do you see a mental health professional, see a counselor, psychologist, whatever? If so,
I
is it
do
regular?
that, but I
Okay,
don't
I
really
skip it.
follow up on whether or not they're actually seeing this person. There are
Yeah.
times where the client's struggling and the advice you're getting seems questionable, that I will follow up and say, are you still seeing your counselor? Because you seem to be struggling with this. But no, every one of my clients, virtually, you should get some counseling because it's difficult shit to deal with.
Isn't
And I
it? Yeah.
need you to be your best self so that I can do my best job. But I don't follow up. And I mean, the clients ultimately they're adults, right?
Right.
So
I mean, I
whether or
don't
not
follow
you
up
want
in
to go
that
to
sense.
counseling is your prerogative. Best I can do is give you my best advice that it's helpful, and can save you not just heartache, but money.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're going to give me better advice, it means you're less likely to litigate when you don't need to. You're more likely to find a resolution that is within reason, which can translate into shorter divorce and lower legal fees.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I don't follow up, but I do track and I keep in mind, and I've got it. I keep a list of what I need to do on a file, what's been done, and in that list I track, okay, who's seen this mental health professional, who isn't, and I take clients' words for it. And I guess typically I don't follow up. Are you actually doing it? I never verify whether it's happening, but I do find overall, my clients who get mental health help on the side, that they do fare better. They're spending way less money on me. They're giving me direct, clear instructions. It's not 2, 3, 4, 5 emails a day where I'm charging, 6 minutes for every single email. It is, 1 email a week. Here's what you got to do. Here's the next step. Here's the answer to your 3 questions, clear and concise. They're spending way less money on me, giving me better instruction. I'm able to get them better results. Yeah, so it is better. It is helpful. So I guess a takeaway from this would be, hey, that's not something worth skimping on. That's really useful.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Now the real question, so we've answered that. I think the fundamental question, though, and if anyone actually watches this,
Right.
which hopefully a few people will.
We got 3 followers.
Yeah. What I want to know is, does Tyler look cooler because he's got headphones? And should I be wearing headphones? Or does that give me kind of a Mickey Mouse kind of a thing going on?
I think my headphones are a little different than yours there, Nikki.
Because I was wearing these. I was talking to a judge last night actually about some changes in response to this COVID thing.
Yeah.
And when I first was talking to her, I was doing this. And I'm looking, and I'm like, they look like mouse ears. So
it does look like you could be in Disneyland.
Yeah. So anyway.
Your mic is cool. I like your mic.
Yeah. That's
Whoa.
It's a Yeti.
It looks as heavy as my infant.
It probably is.
I
Well,
bet.
probably not now. Maybe a month or so ago.
I guess he's a toddler. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I don't know. I went to Best Buy yesterday.
Oh.
Have to say, incredibly good service.
Good.
Response to this COVID thing.
Awesome.
I don't know what everyone's experience is, in terms of shopping right now. Costco's been really good. Safeway's been pretty good. Save-On's a nightmare, my personal opinion. Best Buy, I went there and the guy said, did you order online? And I went, no. And he goes, well, you can't. This is only for pickups. I went, oh. So I went in my truck and I got my cell phone. I ordered my mic. And then 3 minutes later, I got confirmation my order is ready to be picked up.
Hey, awesome. Perfect.
Right? And so you go there and you're, do you have an order to pick up? Yes. What's your name? Tells you. They don't let you in the store. You sit outside. And then one person at a time goes to the till in the whole store and you do your transaction.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, it was really good.
That is really good.
And I'm not usually a big fan of Best Buy. And we're not endorsing Best Buy.
Not endorsing them. They're not sponsoring us.
No, not
Although
yet.
they could.
If they wanted.
If they want to.
Best Buy. For the finest products. Anyway, yeah, so that's where I got my little microphone, but you can't really see it. I guess that's a little bit better.
It's a little bit better. We can work on that.
Without the headphones.
We can work on that.
We'll get.
I don't know if it'd be better if I had a little.
We'll get feedback from the throngs of followers we're probably gonna get after today.
I'm sure.
Headphones or no headphones.
Let's go back to the drink. I want to know about that. So how was it?
You know what? It wasn't bad. Basically, it's a martini. If you like martinis, you might like this drink. There's no sweetness to it. I used dry sherry with gin. And I added maraschino cherry and a little leaf of basil.
Yeah.
And it wasn't bad. But I don't mind a good martini either.
Right. So you're okay with it.
And what are you drinking?
I am drinking some Glenfiddich 15-year.
Scotch.
Yeah, it's really good. Very smooth. Very smooth. I like Highland Park 12. I find that to be really smooth with a nice peaty finish. But this is pretty good.
So we'll have to maybe incorporate that into our weekly routine.
We got to figure out what drink is next week.
Well, I'm going to continue with the straight law just because that's our namesake.
I think it's because you've got 2 giant bottles behind you, but okay.
Well, yeah. Yes, definitely.
All right. And when this COVID is over, we can get together.
It is Friday. It's like, what is it, 2:44?
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm going to start doing a bunch of work now in a sort of somewhat inebriated state. But yeah, maybe next week I'll do the straight law and you could bring in a new. So you could be the drink aficionado and I'll be the basic old guy.
I'll come up with something for next week.
Yeah.
And next week, I want to know why you shook it and you didn't stir it. So we can ask you that next week. I want an answer.
Because I have no idea.
Next week.
I'm not an expert by any means. The recipes I looked up all said shake, strain to a cocktail glass.
All right. Okay, well, this was a pleasure. I think somewhat productive, maybe.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. I guess we'll see if we get some feedback.
Yeah,
it might take some time, but we'll do this every week. I think the idea is to try to get the thing out sometime late Friday.
Yeah.
And we'll see where this takes us.
Sounds good. All right, well, I hear a bunch of creaking and moaning in the background over there, so it sounds like you got an intruder or something you got to take care of.
I've got my dear lawyer wife.
All right, well, then this is it. We'll let you go.
All right, take care.
Right.
Have a good weekend. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.